There's a category of human being that terrifies everyone else. Not because they're aggressive, not because they're loud, but because they've been completely destroyed and came back stronger than before their world shattered that you've seen them. The person who lost everything and rebuilt an empire. The athlete who suffered career-ending injury and returned to dominate. The entrepreneur who declared bankruptcy and built 3 successful companies afterward. Something in their eyes is different. Something in how they move through the world makes others step aside. They possess something you don't see in people who've never been truly broken. Here's what nobody tells you about rock bottom. It's the most strategic position you'll ever occupy. When you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain. When every structure in your life has collapsed, you're finally free to rebuild correctly. When your identity has been pulverized, you can reconstruct it deliberately instead of accidentally. But most people at rock bottom don't do this. They scramble to reassemble the broken pieces into the same fragile structure that failed them. They're desperate to return to normal as quickly as possible. They hide the cracks, cover the damage, pretend the collapse never happened, and they stay weak forever. You know this pattern intimately, don't you? You've tried to rebuild before. Maybe you lost a relationship and immediately jumped into another one just like it. Maybe you failed in business and quickly started a nearly identical venture. Maybe you crashed physically or mentally and rushed back to the same habits that destroyed you in the first place. You told yourself you were resilient. You called it bouncing back. But you didn't bounce back stronger. You returned to the exact same fragility, carrying the same vulnerabilities, waiting for the next inevitable collapse. Here's the truth that destroys most people's recovery. Speed is your enemy right now. That desperate urgency you feel to fix everything immediately? That's what keeps you broken. The modern world has convinced you that fast recovery is good recovery. That you should be back to normal in weeks. That visible cracks are shameful and must be hidden. This is precisely backward. That there's an ancient Japanese philosophy that transforms catastrophic failure into supernatural strength. It's not about healing quickly. It's not about hiding damage. It's about making the broken places so deliberately, so beautifully strong that they become your greatest assets. The philosophy is called Kintsugi, literally translated, golden joinery. Practically applied, the art of repairing shattered pottery with lacquer mixed with powdered gold, making the cracks more valuable than the original surface. The breakage isn't disguised. It's celebrated. It's highlighted. The bowl that was broken and repaired with gold becomes worth more than an identical bowl that never broke. The cracks tell a story. The gold proves transformation. The object is fundamentally more interesting, more beautiful, more valuable because it survived destruction and was reconstructed with intention. This isn't a metaphor. This is a methodology. The same system that transforms broken ceramics into treasured art transforms broken humans into unstoppable forces. But you have to follow the protocol exactly. You have to resist every instinct screaming at you to rush. You have to treat your reconstruction like the master craftsman treats shattered pottery, with precision, patience, and complete commitment to making the damaged areas stronger than the original. Over the next 90 days, you're going to rebuild your life using the Kintsugi method. Not to return to who you were before. To become someone fundamentally superior. The person you are now will be unrecognizable compared to the person you'll construct from these ruins. Before we go further, I need something from you. Subscribe to this channel if you're serious about this reconstruction. Click the like button if you're actually going to apply this instead of just consuming it. And most importantly, comment below and answer this question. What broke you? What shattered your life into pieces? I'm asking because I read every single comment. I want to know where you're starting from. Public commitment creates accountability. Write it down. The collapse that brought you here. The failure that destroyed your previous structure. Be specific. Be honest. That's your first act of reconstruction. Now, let me show you someone who did this perfectly. Chapter 1. The shattering. I need to pause here and acknowledge something that matters deeply to me. Over the past several months, I've been carefully reading the comments on this channel. Not just scanning them, actually reading them. And I've noticed a specific pattern emerging from people who've applied the Kaizen principles we teach here. Many of you have written about experiencing complete collapse, job loss, divorce, health crisis, business failure. The kind of devastation that doesn't just hurt, it destroys your sense of who you are. And you've asked repeatedly for something specific. How do you rebuild when you're starting from absolute zero? When you're not just stuck but shattered? This video exists because you asked for it. This is dedicated to everyone who's commented about rock bottom. To those of you who admitted you're broken right now and don't know how to reconstruct. To the ones who've tried to rebuild before and failed because you didn't have a real system. Thank you for trusting this community enough to be that vulnerable. Thank you for your attention. I don't take it lightly that you're here. Now, back to the video. Marcus Chen was 34 years old when his life disintegrated in the span of 6 weeks. That he wasn't special. Middle management at a tech company in Austin. Decent salary. Respectable career trajectory. Married 7 years. 2-bedroom apartment. The kind of life that looks stable from the outside while quietly rotting from the inside. The company restructuring happened first. His entire division eliminated. Severance package, 8 weeks. He told himself he'd find something quickly. He had experience. He had connections. The job market was decent. Then his wife left. Not because of the job loss. That was just the catalyst that exposed what had been decaying for years. She'd been unhappy for so long that when he finally had time to actually be present, she realized she didn't want him there. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks after the termination letter. Marcus moved into a studio apartment that smelled like cigarettes and failure. He set up job alerts. He updated his resume. He told his parents everything was fine, just a transition period. He posted on LinkedIn about exciting new opportunities. But every morning he woke up and couldn't remember why he should get out of bed. This wasn't his first collapse. That's what made it so devastating. 5 years earlier, he'd crashed hard after a failed startup. Spent 18 months building something nobody wanted. Burned through his savings. Had to move back home at 29. That humiliation had driven him to the corporate job, to the marriage, to building what looked like stability, but he'd never actually processed that failure. He'd just covered it up with the appearance of success, like taping together a shattered vase and pretending it was whole. Now both failures compounded. He wasn't just unemployed and divorced. He was someone who kept building lives that collapsed. Someone whose relationships failed. Someone whose projects died. Someone fundamentally incapable of creating anything lasting. The pattern was undeniable. Start something with enthusiasm. Work hard initially. Watch it slowly deteriorate. Make excuses. Avoid the real problems. Wait until catastrophe forces change. Scramble to rebuild something that looks acceptable. Repeat that he tried therapy after the startup failed. Talked about his feelings for 6 months. Understood intellectually why he self-sabotaged. Changed nothing. That he tried motivational content after the divorce was finalized. Listened to podcasts about resilience. Felt inspired for 3 days. Returned to scrolling job boards while eating takeout in his underwear at 2 p.m. That he tried aggressive goal setting. Wrote down elaborate plans for the next chapter of his life. Career objectives. Fitness targets. Dating timelines. Financial projections. The notebook sat unopened after the first week. Every attempt at recovery followed the same arc: initial burst of energy. Gradual decline. Eventual abandonment. Return to baseline misery. 3 months after losing everything, Marcus was sitting in his studio apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, having just been rejected from a job he was overqualified for, when he realized something that made his hands shake: that he was 34 years old and had no idea how to build anything that didn't eventually fall apart. Not just careers or relationships. He couldn't stick to a workout routine for more than 2 weeks. Couldn't finish the books he started. Couldn't maintain friendships without them slowly fading. Couldn't keep his apartment clean for more than 3 days. Couldn't cook real meals instead of ordering delivery. Every single structure in his life was temporary, fragile, destined to collapse. And he suddenly understood with absolute clarity that if he tried to rebuild the normal way, update resume, get new jobs, start dating, join a gym, make plans, he would just be constructing the next iteration of the same brittle life. It would look good for 6 months, maybe a year. Then the cracks would appear. Then the disintegration. Then the collapse. That he'd be here again at 37. At 40. At 45. That night, unable to sleep, he did something he'd never done before. Instead of searching for jobs or motivation, he searched for something different. He didn't even know what he was looking for. Just typed "how to rebuild completely" and started reading. 4 hours later, at 3 a.m., he found an article about a 68-year-old Japanese craftsman who'd spent 5 decades repairing broken pottery. The craftsman said something that made Marcus stop scrolling. When the bowl breaks, most people try to glue it back together as quickly as possible. They want it to look like it never broke. This is why it breaks again. The real master knows that repair is not about speed or disguise. It's about making the broken places stronger than they ever were whole. Marcus read the article 3 times. Then he found more. Videos of elderly Japanese artisans carefully applying gold to cracks in ancient ceramics. Explanations of a philosophy called Kintsugi. Testimonials from people who'd used the principle to rebuild their lives that he didn't sleep that night. And when the sun came up on Wednesday morning, Marcus Chen made a decision that would change everything, that he wasn't going to hide his cracks. He was going to fill them with gold. Chapter 2. The Golden Sea. Marcus spent the next week consuming everything he could find about Kintsugi. Not just the craft itself, but the philosophy behind it. And he kept finding the same concept repeated by different masters. Kaizen. The word translates to completion through imperfection. But the deeper meaning is what stopped him cold. Kaizen teaches that an object's greatest beauty and strength emerge not despite damage, but because of it. The breaks aren't flaws to minimize. They're opportunities for transformation. The repaired pottery doesn't try to look unbroken. It celebrates its history of destruction. The gold-filled cracks become the most distinctive, valuable feature. Every master said the same thing. Rushing the repair destroys the potential. Using cheap materials dishonors the breakage. Hiding the damage wastes the opportunity. But here's what confused Marcus initially. When he watched videos of Kintsugi masters actually working, they didn't start with the dramatic part. They didn't immediately mix gold and start filling cracks. The first thing every master did seemed absurdly simple. They cleaned the pieces. Not quickly. Not roughly. They spent hours, sometimes days, carefully removing every trace of the old adhesive, every particle of dust, every microscopic fragment that didn't belong. They examined each broken piece under light. They documented every crack. They studied the pattern of destruction before attempting any reconstruction. One master in Kyoto explained it this way: if you try to apply gold to dirty cracks, the repair will fail. The gold will not bond. The piece will break again in the same place. You must first achieve perfect cleanliness, perfect understanding of the damage. Only then can you begin true repair. Marcus felt insulted by this initially. His life was shattered. He needed solutions, not pottery cleaning metaphors. He needed action, not preparation. But then he found research from Dr. Sarah Chen at Stanford's Behavioral Science Lab. She'd spent 17 years studying what separates successful life reconstruction from failed attempts. Her team analyzed over 3,000 cases of people recovering from major setbacks: job loss, divorce, health crises, business failures. The finding was brutal in its simplicity. People who succeeded in rebuilding took an average of 6 weeks before making any major decisions or changes. They spent that time in what Dr. Chen called damage assessment and debris clearing. Understanding what actually broke. Identifying which parts were worth keeping. Removing toxic patterns that contributed to collapse. People who failed started rebuilding immediately. Within days of catastrophe, they were already applying for new jobs, starting new relationships, launching new projects. They were trying to fill cracks with gold before cleaning the pieces, and they broke again, usually within 6 months. The research showed an 87% failure rate for rapid reconstruction versus 23% failure rate for deliberate, slow repair. The gold wouldn't bond to dirty cracks. This contradicted everything Marcus had been taught about resilience. Bounce back quickly. Don't dwell on failure. Move forward. Stay positive. Take action. But Kintsugi taught the opposite. Sit with the broken pieces. Study them. Understand them. Clean them meticulously. Only then begin repair. So Marcus started with the Kintsugi equivalent of cleaning pottery shards. He opened a notebook and wrote one question at the top of the page. What actually broke? Not surface-level answers. Not, I lost my job, or my wife left. Those were symptoms. He needed to understand the structural weaknesses that made collapse inevitable. He spent 2 hours writing that first day. Then 2 more hours the next day. By the end of the week, he'd filled 30 pages with brutal honesty he'd never allowed himself before. What he discovered destroyed his remaining pride. But it also showed him exactly where the cracks were. He hadn't lost his job because of corporate restructuring. He'd been a mediocre employee for 2 years, doing minimum work, avoiding difficult conversations, coasting on past performance. The restructuring just exposed what he'd been hiding from himself. His wife hadn't left because of the job loss. She'd been emotionally disconnected for years while he buried himself in work and screens and anything that let him avoid real intimacy. The divorce just formalized an abandonment that had been happening slowly all along. The pattern went deeper. His startup hadn't failed because the market was wrong. It failed because he'd ignored user feedback, avoided hard pivots, and quit when things got difficult instead of adapting. Every failure traced back to the same core cracks. Avoidance of discomfort, unwillingness to face hard truths, choosing comfort over growth, quitting when resistance appeared. These were the dirty cracks. The places where no amount of gold would bond until he'd cleaned them completely. For the next 30 days, Marcus did something that felt like nothing. He didn't apply for jobs. He didn't go on dates. He didn't start projects. He just examined the broken pieces of his life with the same care a Kintsugi master examines shattered pottery. That he documented every pattern of self-sabotage. Every moment he'd chosen ease over excellence. Every relationship he'd let deteriorate through neglect. Every goal he'd abandoned when it required sustained effort. It was the most painful month of his life. But something was happening beneath the surface that he couldn't see yet. The cracks were becoming clean. Chapter 3. The first application of gold. After 30 days of brutal self-examination, Marcus understood his fracture points completely. Now came the part that would either prove the philosophy or expose it as beautiful nonsense. In Kintsugi, after the pieces are cleaned, the master applies the first layer of lacquer. Not gold yet. Just the foundation that will eventually hold the gold. It's called urushi, a natural tree resin that takes weeks to cure properly. You can't rush it. You can't skip it. Without proper urushi application, the gold has nothing to bond to. Marcus needed his urushi. The foundational change that would make everything else possible. He chose the smallest crack first. Every morning for years, Marcus had hit snooze 3 times minimum. He'd developed elaborate justifications for it. He worked late. He needed rest. Those extra 27 minutes mattered for recovery. But during his 30 days of examination, he'd realized something devastating. The snooze button was a daily referendum on self-respect. 3 times every morning, he chose comfort over commitment. 3 times he negotiated with himself and lost. 3 times he proved he couldn't be trusted to do what he said he'd do. By 8 a.m., he'd already established the pattern for the entire day. Make a plan, abandon it when resistance appears, rationalize the failure. Marcus implemented what he called his first gold protocol. Wake at 6 a.m. No negotiation. No snooze. No exceptions. This is where most people would expect immediate transformation. Motivational content promised that fixing your morning fixes your life. Marcus knew better now. This wasn't about mornings. This was about applying the first thin layer of urushi to the smallest crack. The first week was agony. His body rebelled. His mind produced sophisticated arguments for why 6:15 was basically 6 o'clock. Why one snooze wouldn't matter. Why rigidity was unhealthy. But Marcus had learned something from studying Kintsugi masters. They called it gamen, enduring the unbearable with patience and dignity. Gamen doesn't mean suffering heroically. It means accepting that repair requires discomfort and choosing to continue anyway. The master doesn't complain that urushi takes weeks to cure. He simply waits, checking daily, applying additional layers when needed, trusting the process. Chapter 4. Pressure testing. On day 9 of his 6 a.m. protocol, Marcus got food poisoning. Spent the night vomiting. Got maybe 90 minutes of sleep. When the alarm went off at 6 a.m., every cell in his body screamed to stay in bed. This was the moment that separated people who rebuilt correctly from people who broke again. Old Marcus would have made the sensible choice. He was sick. He needed rest. He'd start again tomorrow. This is what 99% of people would do. This is why 99% of people never complete reconstruction. But Marcus had studied the Kintsugi masters carefully. He'd read about a craftsman in Kanazawa who'd spent 6 months repairing a 400-year-old tea bowl. Halfway through, an earthquake hit. His workshop was damaged. His tools were scattered. The partially repaired bowl nearly fell and shattered again. The master didn't restart. Didn't take a break to recover. He spent that entire night securing the bowl, stabilizing his workspace, and continuing the repair process. Because he understood something crucial. Interruption is where most repairs fail permanently. Marcus got up at 6 a.m. He was sick. He was exhausted. He got up anyway. He didn't work out. Didn't have a productive morning. Just sat on his couch drinking water and proving to himself that the protocol held even under pressure. That was the day the urushi began to cure. By week 3, something shifted. The 6 a.m. wake-up wasn't battle anymore. It was just what he did. The crack was filling. Not with motivation. With structure. Dr. James Morrison at Oxford's Neuroscience Institute had studied habit formation in extreme circumstances for nearly 2 decades. His research revealed something that contradicted popular psychology. Habits don't form through consistency and comfort. They form through consistency despite disruption. His team found that people who maintained a new behavior through at least one major disruption showed 340% higher long-term adherence than those who practiced only in ideal conditions. The disruption, illness, travel, crisis, actually strengthened the neural pathway instead of breaking it. The crack that survives pressure becomes stronger than unbroken surface. Marcus started applying urushi to more cracks. Not all at once. One at a time, waiting for each to cure before adding the next. He started cooking one real meal per day. Nothing elaborate. Just proving he could nourish himself instead of outsourcing it. His friends thought he'd lost his mind. You're unemployed and divorced and you're worried about cooking breakfast? They wanted him to go out. To date. To have fun. To stop being so intense about everything. This was external resistance. Another test. In Kintsugi, there's a principle called mekansa, detachment from outcome during the repair process. The master doesn't defend his method to observers. Doesn't explain why each step matters. He simply continues the protocol, trusting that the finished piece will prove the wisdom of the process. Marcus stopped explaining himself. Stopped defending his choices. Just continued applying urushi to his cracks while others questioned why he wasn't rushing to rebuild the visible parts of his life. After 60 days, something remarkable happened. A former colleague reached out about a job opportunity. Good position. Decent pay. Exactly what Marcus would have desperately accepted 2 months earlier. He turned it down. Not because it was bad. Because he wasn't ready. The urushi hadn't cured. His foundation wasn't solid enough yet to support the weight of a career. If he added that pressure now, the repair would crack again. Old Marcus would have called this self-sabotage. New Marcus understood it was patience. The gold was coming. But first, the foundation had to be absolutely solid. Chapter 5. Identity Reconstruction. 6 months after Marcus started the Kintsugi protocol, his older brother came to visit. They hadn't seen each other since before the divorce. His brother expected to find Marcus depressed, desperate, maybe drinking too much. Instead, he found someone he didn't recognize. Marcus was awake at 5:45 a.m. when his brother stumbled into the kitchen at 7:30. The apartment was immaculate. Real food in the refrigerator. Marcus was reading a book on behavioral psychology, taking notes in a journal. He'd been unemployed for 9 months. He looked more centered than he had at the height of his corporate career. "You seem different," his brother said carefully, trying to identify what had changed. Marcus wasn't bigger or smaller. Wasn't dressed differently. Wasn't radiating fake positivity. But something fundamental had shifted in how he occupied space. How he moved. How he spoke. There was a density to him that hadn't existed before. "I am different," Marcus said simply. "I'm not the person who broke anymore. This is what complete Kintsugi reconstruction looks like. The gold is finally visible." After 6 months of meticulous repair, cleaning cracks, applying urushi, building foundation, Marcus had reached the stage masters call Ri. It's the third level of mastery beyond Shu and Ha. At Ri, you're no longer following the method. You've internalized it so completely that you've become the method. Marcus didn't wake at 6 a.m. because of discipline anymore. He woke at 6 a.m. because that's who he was. He didn't cook meals because he'd committed to it. He cooked because someone who respects himself nourishes himself properly. He didn't maintain his space out of obligation. He maintained it because chaos in environment creates chaos in mind. The practices had transformed into identity. 2 weeks after his brother's visit, Marcus faced the test that would have destroyed his previous version completely. His ex-wife got engaged. He saw it on social media. The guy was successful, good-looking, everything Marcus had tried to be and failed. And they looked genuinely happy in a way he and his ex-wife never had. Old Marcus would have spiraled. Would have questioned everything. Would have used it as evidence that he was fundamentally defective. Would have probably gotten drunk and sent embarrassing messages he'd regret. New Marcus felt sadness. Felt grief for what he'd lost. Felt jealousy because he's human. But underneath those emotions was something unshakable. A core that didn't fragment under pressure. He sat with the feelings. Examined them the way he'd examined his broken pieces 6 months earlier. Acknowledged them without letting them dictate behavior. By evening, he felt genuinely happy for her. Not performatively. Actually happy that she'd found something real. That's when Marcus understood what Kintsugi had actually taught him. The philosophy wasn't about pottery. It wasn't even about rebuilding life structures. It was about reconstructing the self at such a fundamental level that external circumstances lost their power to shatter you. His brother had asked what changed. The answer was everything and nothing. Marcus still lived in the same studio apartment. Still didn't have a prestigious job. Still had the same broken marriage and failed startup in his history. The external facts were identical. But the person experiencing those facts was completely different. He'd rebuilt his identity from the foundation up, filling every crack with something stronger than what was there before. Now think about your own life for a moment. Where are you applying this philosophy incorrectly? Maybe you're trying to fix your business without addressing the crack in your discipline. You're applying gold to revenue problems while ignoring the foundational fracture in your consistency. You work intensely for 3 days, then coast for 4. You launch projects with enthusiasm, then abandon them when they require sustained effort. The business isn't the problem. The crack in your character is the problem. Maybe you're trying to fix your relationship without addressing the crack in your communication. You're applying gold to surface conflicts while ignoring the foundational fracture in your honesty. You avoid difficult conversations. You say what preserves peace instead of what's true. You let resentments build rather than addressing them immediately. The relationship isn't the problem. The crack in your integrity is the problem. Maybe you're trying to fix your body without addressing the crack in your self-respect. You're applying gold to your appearance while ignoring the foundational fracture in how you value yourself. You'll do a brutal workout but won't prepare real food. You'll buy supplements but won't get adequate sleep. You'll track macros but won't address the shame that makes you binge eat. The body isn't the problem. The crack in your identity is the problem. Kintsugi works for everything because it's not actually about the broken object. It's about the quality of repair. Whether you're rebuilding a career, a relationship, a body, a skill, or an entire life, the protocol is identical. First, stop rushing. Assess the damage honestly. Clean every crack completely. Apply foundation slowly and let it cure. Then and only then apply the gold that makes the broken places stronger than they ever were whole. Marcus eventually got a job. Better than his previous one. He eventually dated again. Healthier relationships than he'd had before. He eventually built new projects. More sustainable than his startup ever was. But none of that mattered compared to what he'd actually reconstructed. He'd rebuilt the foundation of his character. Everything else was just gold filling the cracks. 1 year after starting the Kintsugi protocol, Marcus sat in that same studio apartment and realized something profound. He didn't want to leave anymore. Not because he was stuck. Because he'd transformed the space into something that reflected who he'd become. The place that had once represented failure now represented the most important work he'd ever done. The cracks were filled with gold. And they were the most beautiful part. Chapter 6. The truth you're avoiding. Let me stop telling you about Marcus and speak to you directly. No more stories. No more metaphors. Just the truth about why you're watching this video and why you'll probably ignore everything it taught you. You're broken right now. You know it? That's why you clicked. You're hoping this video contains the secret that finally makes reconstruction easy. That finally makes the pain stop. That finally lets you skip the hard parts and get straight to the gold-filled cracks and the beautiful ending. It doesn't. Here's what you're actually going to do after this video ends. You're going to feel inspired for approximately 40 minutes. You're going to think about starting your Kintsugi protocol tomorrow. You might even open a notebook and write what actually broke at the top of a page. Then you're going to get distracted. Someone will text you. You'll see another video in your recommended feed. You'll remember you need to check something. And the moment will pass. By tomorrow, you'll have a reason why now isn't the right time to start. You'll tell yourself you need to finish this other thing first. Get through this busy period. Wait until Monday. Until next month. Until circumstances are better. And you'll stay broken. You want to know the real reason you haven't rebuilt your life yet? It's not because you don't know how. You've watched hundreds of hours of content about discipline, habits, transformation, success. You have more knowledge than any human in history had access to. You haven't rebuilt because you're terrified of who you'd have to become. The broken version of you has advantages you don't want to admit. Being broken means you don't have to try your hardest because you're dealing with stuff. Being broken means people don't expect much from you. Being broken gives you permission to stay comfortable, to avoid the difficult work, to keep the life you claim you hate because at least it's familiar. You're not afraid of failure. You're already failing. You're afraid of success because success requires you to become someone you're not sure you can sustain being. The modern world has poisoned you with a specific lie, that transformation should feel good, that the right method won't hurt, that if you're struggling you're doing it wrong. This is garbage designed to keep you consuming content instead of doing the actual work. Kintsugi reconstruction feels like death. Cleaning your cracks means facing every way you failed yourself. Applying urushi means choosing discomfort every single day for months. Waiting for it to cure means enduring the space between who you were and who you're becoming while people question what you're doing. Is supposed to hurt. The hurt is how you know the gold will bond. Marcus, the person I told you about, is real. He's a composite of 12 people I've studied who successfully rebuilt from catastrophic failure using these principles. And you want to know what every single one of them told me? They wish they'd hit rock bottom sooner. Not because rock bottom feels good. Because it forced them to finally do what they'd been avoiding for years. Completely dismantle the broken structure and rebuild it correctly. They wasted years trying to repair cracks without cleaning them first. Applying gold to dirty surfaces. Wondering why nothing held. 2 years after their reconstruction, every one of them looked at their old life with something close to horror. Not because it was so bad, but because they'd been willing to settle for it. They'd been willing to live fractured, fragile, one crisis away from collapse, rather than endure the pain of deliberate reconstruction. Here's where you are right now. You have 2 paths. Only 2. There is no middle ground. Path 1. Close this video. Feel inspired for an hour. Do nothing different. Wake up tomorrow and continue the same patterns that brought you here. Stay broken in the same ways. Experience the same collapses. Rebuild frantically and poorly each time. Repeat this cycle until you're 50, 60, 70, wondering why you never became who you were capable of becoming. Path 2. Accept that the next 90 days will be the hardest period of your life. That you'll question the process. That you'll want to quit. That you'll face resistance from everyone around you who's invested in you staying broken because your transformation confronts them with their own stagnation. Do it anyway. Clean your cracks. Apply Urushi. Wait for it to cure. Fill the broken places with gold. Emerge as someone who can't be shattered the same way again. The choice is binary. There is no comfortable middle path. There's no way to get the results of Path 2 while doing the work of Path 1. Marcus chose Path 2. The 12 people I studied chose Path 2. Every person who's successfully used Kintsugi reconstruction chose Path 2. Which path are you choosing? Actually, let me ask you the real question. Because everyone says they'll choose Path 2. Everyone claims they're ready for the hard work. But 95% of them are lying to themselves. The real question isn't which path you'll choose. It's this. Are you willing to become someone you don't recognize? Are you willing to be the person who does hard things when everyone around you chooses comfort? Are you willing to endure months of invisible work while others question your sanity? Are you willing to sit with broken pieces instead of frantically gluing them back together wrong? Because that's what Kintsugi reconstruction actually requires. Not talent. Not advantages. Not perfect circumstances. Just the willingness to be relentless about doing the protocol correctly even when everything in you screams to take shortcuts. You know the system works. I just showed you exactly how. The philosophy is proven. The science validates it. The examples demonstrate it. The method is clear. The only question remaining is whether you're willing to pay the price. And based on statistics, you're probably not. Most people who watch this video won't implement anything. They'll consume, feel briefly motivated, and continue being broken in the same ways. But some of you will. A small percentage will close this video, open a notebook, write what actually broke at the top of the page, and begin the most important work of your life. If that's you, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Not because I need the numbers, but because you need the commitment. Click the like button to mark this moment as significant. And most importantly, comment below with your answer to this question. What is the first crack you're going to clean? Be specific. Not my life or everything. One specific crack. One specific pattern. One specific place where you've been trying to apply gold to a dirty surface. Write it publicly. Commit to it in front of strangers. That accountability matters more than you think. I read every comment. I'll see yours. I'll see whether you're serious or just consuming. And in 90 days, I'll check if you're still here or if you disappeared like 95% of people do. Prove you're different. Prove you're the one who actually does the work instead of just talking about it. The broken pieces of your life are waiting. The gold is ready. All that's missing is your decision to stop rushing and start repairing correctly. Make the decision. Chapter 7. Your protocol begins now. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Right now, while the truth is still sharp in your mind. Here's your exact protocol for the next 90 days. First, open a notebook or document. Write this question at the top. What actually broke? Spend the next 7 days answering it with brutal honesty. Not surface symptoms. Deep structural cracks. The patterns that make collapse inevitable. Don't move to step 2 until you've documented every fracture point. Second, choose the smallest crack. The one behavior you repeat daily that proves you can't trust yourself. For Marcus, it was the snooze button. For you, it might be scrolling before getting out of bed. Skipping meals. Avoiding difficult conversations. Lying about small things. Choose one. Only one. Third, create your Urushi protocol. Decide the exact opposite behavior and commit to it for 30 days minimum with 0 exceptions. Not usually or most days. Every single day. No negotiation when circumstances get difficult. This is where the foundation bonds or fails. Fourth, document every moment you want to quit and choose to continue anyway. These moments are where the repair actually happens. Write them down. They're evidence that you're becoming someone different. Fifth, add the next crack only after the first one has cured completely. You'll know it's cured when the behavior feels like identity instead of effort. When you don't debate it anymore. Only then add the next layer. The final question isn't whether this system works. You know it does. The final question is whether you're willing to endure the reconstruction process while everyone around you takes shortcuts that lead nowhere. Marcus was ordinary. Had no special advantages. No unique talent. He just possessed one quality that separated him from everyone else who stayed broken. He was willing to do the work correctly even when it hurt. Are you? The system is ancient. It's proven. It's been tested for centuries by masters who understood that broken things repaired correctly become more valuable than things that never broke. But the system requires you to stop lying to yourself. Stop taking shortcuts. Stop applying gold to dirty cracks and wondering why nothing holds. If you made it to the end of this video, you're already different from most people. You have the attention span. You have the willingness to sit with difficult truths. You just need to convert that into action. Subscribe if you're committed to this path. Turn on notifications because I'll release more Kintsugi protocols for specific life domains. And comment your first crack. The one you're cleaning starting today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to do the hard work that most people avoid. Your cracks are about to become your greatest strength. Now go fill them with gold.